Starting the stream shortly. This is just a quick sound test. Good evening, everybody. Good evening from the UK. Welcome to the Excel Spreadsheet Skunkworks. This is our first live stream. Very excited about it. Hope you're excited about it too. If this is the first time you're watching a video on the channel, this is where we try to learn Excel VBA through doing live Excel VBA demonstration. I'm a practicing Excel VBA consultant. I have another YouTube channel called Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions, and I think the best way to demonstrate and to share the love and to share the benefits, the massive benefits of Excel VBA, is to do live demonstrations, because you can see what it's really like and you can see what it's like being in the dirt, working through all this code and the skills that are needed to really get things done in Excel VBA. So thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Let's see who's with us in the chat. We've got a few people watching now, and welcome David. Now David's been, we've been interacting via email, and David's done some great work on the Spreadsheet Skunkworks live stream, which is going to be coming up on this channel too. So David, good to see you. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, and we traditionally have another question, which is what is the weather like? Where are you in the world and what is the weather like? Now, for tonight's stream, the topic is Excel VBA to create reports. So many people out there trying to create reports. What reports are you creating? Let me know in the chat. And are you doing it manually? And if you're doing it manually, do you ever think there must be a better way to do this? So I know I've been there so many times myself, certainly pre-VBA, earlier in my career. So many times I thought there must be a better way to do this. And that's exactly what we're going to get stuck into tonight. I've got a particular example here. Now you can download this file and work along with me. And we've got the link for the file in the chat. So this is all new to me tonight, uploading a file and then making it available to work along. So been having to get a few things ready. I won't be as fluent as usual. Not that I'm ever fluent, let's be honest, but it will be going, bouncing around a bit today. But we have a link in the chat for the file I'm going to work on, which means you quite literally can download the file. You'll have 30 seconds now or more. Go to that link, download the file, work along with me. And this is what we're going to try to do in each of the live streams. It's going to take a particular situation. This particular situation, I've got to do a piece of work tomorrow that's very similar to this. So this is going to actually help me do my work tomorrow. So in the file, go ahead and download it. We've got 3 sheets in the file. First sheet is called report. So we're going to try to get data into this report sheet. Second sheet is called data. So this is our little data set, and we've only got 5 rows, but you could have 55,000 rows. This approach is very easy to scale up, as we'll see. And then the third sheet, we have a briefing. And as always in the Excel Spreadsheet Skunkworks, we have a briefing. So I challenge you, if you're following this video on replay, stop the video now, look at the briefing, and then think, how would I do that? Do some planning and conceptualization yourself. How would I do that? But what we're trying to do is to take a single row, and we're going to take the first row to begin with. We've got a button here. So we want to be able to click on that button. Then for the data in this row to be transferred, I've got a big, I think it's called a daddy long legs. One of those big flying spider things is flying around my setup. Bit of a distraction, to take the data and put it into this report. A typical kind of manual task. Oh, I've got to go through all these rows and copy paste them across into the corresponding cells in the report. That's a typical manual task. Might take us a long time. We're going to do it tonight at the click of a button. And the approach we use, you can use for your reports. It's the approach I use when I've got to move data around a file. I've grown to love it. It's scalable, flexible, robust, and all of that good stuff. Let's see who else we've got in the chat. David, welcome David, already mentioned you, tuning in from the USA. For some reason I thought you were British, David. I have no idea why, just from your email style I thought you were British, but it's great to have another somebody else from the USA tuning in. And Paul is with us tonight. Paul up in Barnsley. Welcome Paul, Junction 37, I think you said last time, of the M1. And Paul says it's wet and weather, fantastic. Wet and wetter, fantastic. Yeah, classic northern weather, you might say. And I'm here between Nottingham and Leicester in the UK, is where I live. And yeah, it's quite wet, getting quite cold and wet tonight. But don't want to go on too much. And let's go ahead and put another sheet in the file after I've worked out how to make this live setup work. There we go. Let's put another sheet in this file, and I'm going to call this sheet engine. And this is going to be a back-end sheet. So this is the kind of sheet we wouldn't show to the client. We might actually hide this sheet at the end of the process. It's going to just contain some information that makes the coding work. You know, it's kind of under the hood, as David would say, under the bonnet, as me and Paul would say. It's something that we don't see all the time, but makes everything work. It's an engine. And we're going to go ahead and let's say report, let's say report cell first. And let's make this row a little bit taller there. So we've got report cell, and then the next column, we're going to say data column. Data column here. Okay. And then let's start bringing this together straight away. So I'm going to go to the report column here. And let's introduce a little more information actually. Let's say Control X, Control V. Let's say data item. And then I'm going to go to the report and copy paste these values. So Control C. Then we're going to do a paste special, Control C, paste special, Control Alt V and V on the Windows PC. And then we've got our data items in there, Alt HOW to adjust the column width, and let's go for about 20 here. So we've just got our data items here, but this is the basic setup for this approach that I advocate for. Super powerful click of a button report creation functionality. You need a column for your data items. That's not necessary, but it makes things easier to understand. You need to say the cell that you want the data to go into, the report cell, and you need to say the column that contains the data. So we could say the origin cell. We're going to see it come together now. So the report cells, well, it's C5 to C10. So let's see if we can do this in. So if we say equals C, and then row -4, this should give us C1, and then Control D, autofill down, Control C, Control Alt V, V to take the values there, and then the data column. What have we got here? Well, the make is column 1, the model, and the year, and then the years, right? Is that right? Yes. Okay. So let's say column 1 here. So from the make is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. This basic setup is what you need to get started. And you might be saying to me, well, Chris, this is meant to be Excel VBA. We haven't done any Excel VBA, but the most powerful Excel VBA routines usually involve the worksheet in some way, because the worksheet is good at doing things and the VBA editor is good at doing things. VBA is good at doing things, but we shouldn't try to do everything in the worksheet, nor should we try to do everything in VBA. And this kind of tabulation of information, yes, there's ways to do it in VBA using arrays and stuff, but I like to have a sheet in the file. It means if we want to add an item to this report, we can just make a change to the worksheet. There's transparency here. We can see what's going on. So for me, it's always about a balance. What should the worksheet be doing? What should we be doing in VBA? Harness the strengths of both and create that synergy. So, but now we're ready to open the VBA editor. So we're going to go developer, Visual Basic, got the VBA editor open. You can see there's no modules in the file yet. So we're going to go insert module and then go ahead. We're going to say option explicit at the top, just because that's good practice for us. And then sub, and let's say create report, an informative name for the macro. If you've got lots of macros, you want to be able to distinguish between them, understand what they're doing. So we're going to say create reports, and we're going to go ahead, declare a range variable here, Chris cell as range. The famous Chris cell variable features on the channel frequently. And then we're going to think the idea is to work through each of the cells in the table, and we're going to say to VBA, listen, the data in this column in the database, take it and put it into this cell in the report. So we're actually going to loop through the table, which can be a difficult idea to understand, because you might think, well, we must be looping through the data. You know, we're working through the data set. Actually, we're looping through this table that we've set up ourselves. You're going to see how we're going to get VBA to point to the right row in the data to get things working. So we're going to say to VBA, loop through each cell in the little table we've just created in the engine. And engine, and let's say range B5 to B10. Okay, we've opened the loop now. Let's close the loop. A couple of things at this point. Now, when I put in this line of code here, it did make a bit of a alarm bell go off in my head, because here we've coded a weakness, we could say. We've made an assumption, you might say, which is we're not going to add any more data to this report. And, you know, this is fine. You know, do it simply first. Do it in the simplest possible way first, but then make a mental note, or really it's best to write it down, of the assumptions we're making. So we're limiting the cells we're working to this range, B5 to B10. So that's, I've made a mental note today. Usually I'll be writing it down. What will be a more dynamic approach? Well, you could think about that. What line of code could you use here? And let me know in the chat. I know we've got some strong coders in the chat tonight. Let me know what line of code here would make this dynamic, so that if we added more data to the report, the code would still work. Again, it's a mechanism that we see on the channel quite often. And I'm just going to check this is working. Just say message box, Chris cell. Let's see what happens here. Now, this can seem a bit strange, certainly if you're new to coding, but here we're testing the mechanism. When do we do testing? We do testing as we go along. We don't save it all for the end. That creates a lot of stress. So I've just created a new mechanism. Let's test the mechanism. This message box is going to tell us the value in Chris cell. Because remember, we're looping through the cells in this range, and we're using the Chris cell variable, the range variable, to control that loop. So what are we expecting to happen? We're expecting the value in cell B5 to pop up in a message box. It's going to be the value because it's the default property of the cell. So let's see what happens. Control S, save the file. Let's go F8, stepping through the code. We've got a message box there that says make. Step through the code again. And we've got model, hit the F5 key, year, mileage 1, mileage 2, mileage 3. Okay, so that loop mechanism seems to be working. So now we need a line of code to actually transfer some data to the report. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So sheets, report. So again, this is going to be a difficult line of code. So what do? We do something simple first, and then we build from there. So let's just try to get some data into one of the report cells, and let's say C5. C5, and let's just say equals data. Okay, so dead simple. You might be looking at me and thinking, oh, that's really simple. Well, this is how we do it in real life. Keep the stress down. Just do it bit by bit, and we can see we've got data in there. So again, we know our reference is accurate now. That's going to save us stress later on, potentially, just testing things step by step. And David said, yep, great contribution in the chat from David. Thank you. Yep. Some math on current region. I prefer end Excel down. Yep. So you'll be able to see in the chat box alongside this video, David suggested using .end Excel down. That says to Excel, rather than hard coding the end of the range with B10, we can say to Excel, keep going until you get to the end of the range. Keep going until you get to the end of the next, until you get to the next empty cell. So that will make this code more dynamic. Okay, so let's try this. So we're going to take this hard-coded, reference here. I'm going to replace this. Can anybody see where I'm going? Maybe David or Paul. Yeah, and Paul, sorry, didn't credit you there. Paul also said Excel up or down, so good stuff. So David or Paul, contributors in the chat tonight. I know you're both good coders, so can you see where I'm going with this? So what we're going to do with this hard-coded reference here. Any ideas? Paul says, Chris, do you prefer Excel down or Excel up? Good question. Good question. And let me know in the chat what you think. It's quite a high level question, we could say. I started with Excel down. And more recently, I've started using Excel up. So the logic is, if we use Excel up, we can say to Excel, go to the last sheet in the spreadsheet, cell 1 million or something, and then go up there until you get to a piece of data. That's one way we can find the end of a database. Another way is to start at the top of the database and then go down to the bottom of the data. Now, the second way is the way I started with, and now I do it the other way. And maybe I don't want to get too far into that discussion now, but maybe what do you think, Paul? Yeah, David's got it in the chat. If there's gaps in the data, the weakness of Excel down is that if there's a gap in the data, Excel down is going to stop at the gap. I've mitigated that by being super careful about data input. So making sure there's data in all the cells. Most of the data sets I'm using with are being populated by VBA. So avoiding the situation where you have any empty cells at all. I've used that combined with Excel down is what I typically use, but more recently I'm moving towards Excel up because it means we avoid those gaps in the table. But the downside, there's always a downside, there's no panaceas in programming. The downside with Excel up is if there's some unwanted data underneath the database, that can catch you out as well. So you've got to always combine these things with other measures, things like data validation, good communication with the client, maybe protecting sheets, protecting cells, combine all these things together to get the best possible solution. Unfortunately, there isn't never an optimal solution, only better and worse solutions, but these matters are subjective. So can anybody see where I'm going with this? So what about if we said, Chris Cell, dot offset 0, 1. Okay. So what's going to happen here? I'm going to go ahead and validate this first. Okay, just to demonstrate how this mechanism is working, and this is how I would do it myself, validating it step by step. So what about this line of code? Quite a curious line of code here. So what is this going to return? And of course, I've got the numbers the wrong way around, so we want to go 0 rows down, 1 column across in this case. So what value is going to be returned? You might want to stop the video and think about it. I'm going to Control S, save the file, F8 key, stepping through the code. I'm hoping that C1 is going to come up in the message box here. Yeah. So we can take that information from the cell, the information in the cell, we can take that information and use that information as a reference, And I've just realized, which is why it's good to test, I've just realized the report cells are not quite accurate, are they? So that we should be starting at C6 here. C6. So let's say C and so row +1 here. Okay, there we go. Control D, Control C, Control V, and V again. Okay, that makes things accurate. So a typical kind of inaccuracy, oversight there. How do we fix it? We fix it because we're working through things step by step, testing as we go along. So let me know, David, Paul, do either of you use this technique? I'm sorry, if you don't use this, you're gonna be using it from tomorrow, I guarantee, because it's so cool when you see all of this come together. So what can we do now? Maybe you can see where this is going. So what's going to happen now? If I let this code go, just set it off, and maybe we will use the F5 key, or maybe not. Maybe we'll just go through it step by step. Keep your eye on here. Keep your eye on the worksheet here. Let's just see what happens. F8 key, stepping through the code here. Okay, we've got data. Yeah, I don't think I quite got those cell references right, but we can see data appearing here. Okay, so Excel is looping down these cells, taking these references, and then using that information to populate a cell on the report sheet, which is excellent, but I didn't quite get it right. So I got it wrong once, got it wrong again. That's what it's like being a programmer, especially, at 8:30 on a Monday night, things kind of get tough. Right, so maybe we can do this, Control X, Control V, and then pop C5 in here. Control S, save the file back to the report sheet, bring the VBA editor back in, run the code, F5 key, and now we've got data in there. So gradually building up our mechanism step by step. Dave says, for hard tables that won't move, offset is great. Many times to keep things dynamic, I'll use match against headers and get the offset column. Love it. Love it, David. So again, I'm loving this high level chat. I don't think I was quite prepared for it, but yeah, here we are hard coding, if you like, hard coding the locations of the column in the database. And David is saying we don't have to hard code it. We could use a match formula and give the column header and then match against that. So for example, model is the third column header, so the match formula would return a value of 3. So rather than having hard-coded values here, we just have a match formula, and that would give us more dynamic quality. That means that you could move the column headers around and this mechanism would still work. Absolutely love that, David. In fact, that exact mechanism I implemented today in a piece of work, the same file I'm going to do this on tomorrow. So all good stuff there. So can we finish this off, or can we progress with this? Can anybody see what's going to happen next? Okay. First, we've got to tell Excel what the row is. Let's have another variable, integer variable here. Say row number. This is going to be an integer variable. You know, we're assuming that we've got less than 35,000 rows. Is it 35,000? What's the maximum value of an integer variable? Anybody in the chat know, David or Paul? Maximum value of an integer variable, I think it's 32,000, or is it 34,000? Anyway, so again, if you're being very critical, you could say that's another assumption we're making. We've hard-coded a weakness there, which is our database is going to be less than a certain number of rows. If you had a larger database, then you need a long variable here, and long variable allows you to use bigger numbers. Okay, so what's the row number going to be? Well, ideally we'd have a mechanism define the row number. I mean, the way I envisage this going is we'd have 5 buttons down here, or the number of buttons would correspond to the number of rows in the database. So we'd have 5 buttons down here. When you click on the button, it takes that row, puts that row into a report. This is what I'm going to try to do for this customer tomorrow. But that's quite a difficult thing to do. So let's just do something simpler, and let's just put a value into the row number variable here, and then later we can make this dynamic. So again, nice and simple, step by step, keep the stress levels down. Though my stress levels have been pretty high today, I've got to say, just trying to get this new live stream, trying to live stream on a new channel on YouTube. That took some working out. That took a lot of working out. David says 36,000, I think, plus or minus, yep, for the integer variable. And Paul says, would it not be better just to use long? Yeah, very good question. So what would be the disadvantage of using a long variable here? To be fair, these are marginal discussions. You know, we're talking about marginal games, but if you can do maximum efficiency, why not do maximum efficiency? What would be the slight drawback of using a long variable here? And admittedly, this is not something that I'm super sure about. Sorry, I'm in the office. My dog's outside and she seems to be irritated by something. So, but anyway, maybe she doesn't like integer variables. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So, any responses to Paul there? Why should we not use a long variable? What's the argument against using a long variable there? So we're going to extend this line of code, and I've just put an underscore in there. That means we continue with the same line of code, and then we're going to say, and here I'm going to use the cells referencing technique, and let's start with the row number variable. So that means that's going to take us to the 5th row, because remember, we've put 5 into the row number variable already. So cells, remember cells, we need the row number and then the column number. Then the column number, let's just say 4 for now. So we're going to take that make, because it's in column 4, column D. We're going to take that make information and hopefully put it into our report. So what are we expecting? We're expecting the report to be populated with Hondas. Now, fans of the channel will know that I am a Honda man. I've still got my Honda Civic, so wanted to represent the brands there. On this long versus integer variable discussion, I know everybody at home is on the edge of their seat about this one. I've used integer as a failsafe to ensure an endless loop craps out. Okay, I see, like it. But I've gotten better at coding since then. So I think David's saying, interesting idea. And as you suggest, if you're a stronger coder, you probably won't have to do that because you'll have better control of loops. But you're saying one way to control a loop is to use an integer variable because it will stop at around 30,000, which means you won't get in an endless loop. Interesting. Yeah, so that's a possible example of integer variable. What about the theory that if you have a long variable, I don't know if you can see that on the live stream, but there's one of these daddy long legs, we call them in the UK. They're these flying spider things that's flying around here, just over there. Scary stuff. Anyway, well, if that thing, takes me out and takes over the live stream, then at least you know what happened. My argument against the long variable is that it uses more memory. My understanding is that integer variable uses very small amounts of memory, and a long variable uses more memory, which puts slightly more load on the processor and results in slightly less efficient coding. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to see where my dog is and get a hit. You come inside. Good girl. You're not. No, not there. You come down there, please. Good girl. Up. Okay, apologies for that. Yeah, the dog flew into the office and ran straight towards all the live streaming equipment, so I had to quickly usher her up onto the sofa. So she's a happy girl now. She's up on the sofa. Yeah, so let me know what's your view on the burning issue here, integer versus long variables. Going to play the code now, F5 key. We can see we've got 6 Hondas in there. So what's happened? Well, we've already seen the mechanism to allow us to work through each of the entries in the report. We've done that earlier in the video. But now we're taking information from the database now, which is good. But because we've hard-coded these references, we're having the same data repeated, the same entry in the database repeated 6 times. Not what we want, but a good intermediary step. If we get that done, that's our base camp. We can then move towards what we want to do in the end. Paul says, suppose it's an easy change to make if getting close to 36,000. Yep, it's an easy change to make. It's an interesting one. I mean, when I first learned VBA, I learned a few of the different variables, and I distinctly remember my teacher, who's a guy called Andrew Martin. I was speaking to him today on email. Good to see you, Andrew, if you're watching. My teacher taught me that it's better to use an integer variable because it uses less. On a short routine like this, you wouldn't tell a video there that we could do to kind of prove or disprove that point. Carlos is here. Welcome, Carlos. How are you? And I think, Carlos, you left a comment on the channel today saying good luck with the new channel. Thank you very much. I'm really pumped that you've tuned in tonight. Thanks for the support. And let me know, Carlos, where are you? I think you're in the States. I'm not absolutely sure. David says, uh-oh. Why did you say that, David? Okay, good. Okay. I thought you saw the big insect that's flying around me, but everything's okay. So let's build this up. So row number is in. So now we want to change this. Again, stop the video. How might we change this? And we're going to recycle some code and just substitute it for the hard-coded value here. I mean, hard-coded values in code generally should be avoided, or at least minimized as far as possible. Then how is this looking? Okay, back to the engine sheet here. So previously for the report cell, we had chriscell.offset. So chriscell is our kind of starting point. Then we're offsetting 1 cell across to get us to the report cell. If we offset 2 cells across, that gets us to the data column. Okay, and I can see these data columns are not going to be accurate. So the first one has to be 4 because our first information is in column D, the 4th column. Okay, so let's take this. Okay, 7, 8, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Yes, counting counting at 20 to 9 on a Monday evening. Not straightforward. Good, good. Carlos is, yes, Carlos, you are from Germany, of course. And yes, welcome. Yeah, by all means, catch up with the stream. I mean, this is the new channel. Everything's live, but everything, unless the stream is a complete disaster, I think we've managed to avert complete disaster on this one, hopefully. Unless the stream is a complete disaster, it will be on there for you to view, for you to catch up with. And this channel is, you know, every day I get questions about VBA, comments on the YouTube channel, emails, a few via Instagram these days, Facebook. And I always think, oh, it would be great just to be able to do a live video to show somebody how to do this, rather than, you know, writing a long comment or, you know, using lots of words when it'd be much easier just to demonstrate something. So that's what I'm going to be using this for. Hopefully, you know, a few times a week when I get a good question in, just fire up a stream and get things going. And all of those videos will be, you know, viewable. All of those videos will be viewable on the channel afterwards. So we're going to build up a bank of videos that are all directly relevant to the real world, all based on real world problems, all based on what my solutions would be, you know, an experienced developer's solution would be. So hopefully that's going to be a really useful bank of information. It's not super smooth formal presentation. It's more down in the dirt at the coalface. This is how it actually works. So hopefully it's going to be useful for people. Paul says, wasn't expecting this tonight. Well, that's going to be the spirit of this channel, Paul. I'm going to fire up a stream every now and again, but I think we're going to keep the Tuesdays, Paul. So Paul, Tuesdays, I know Paul is a fan of the Spreadsheet Skunkworks series, as is David, and Carlos has been in there as well. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. But we're going to continue with the Tuesday night chess. And to be honest, Paul, that was the purpose of the stream tonight, was just to test all the stuff. So you might have got notifications saying I was going to stream earlier. That's when I was just trying to get it working. I think I've got it working well now. So apologies if you got those kind of false notifications. Yeah, and so Paul, I mean, the only way really to keep up with this channel and to make sure you're in the streams is to be subscribed. Be subscribed, have the notifications on, and then you should get a nice notification when we're streaming. If you can tune in, great stuff. I'd love to have you here. It's back to the VBA editor. Now, hopefully this is going to do the job, and then we can talk about the beauty of this piece of code. Control S, save the file. Paul, do you like cricket? I want to draw a cricket analogy, but I'm aware that we've got Carlos here. Carlos, are you German? I know you're in Germany. And then we've got David here, and I'm worried that the cricket analogy might be lost. But Paul, if you like cricket, I'm gonna explain this analogy after we've run this code. Go to the report sheet here. Okay, F5 key. And run the code. We can see the information coming in. It's got Honda Civic 2011 10721. Honda Civic 2011 10721 23523641. Okay, so that seems to have worked very good. And well, let's just talk about the beauty of this code. It's so concise, succinct, just very short piece of code here, but it's super powerful. We're only working with 5 lines. We're only working with 6 lines in our little engine database, but you can extend this further and put the dynamic mechanism in that we spoke about earlier. Maybe we'll put that in now. Put the dynamic mechanism in just to show you how easily you could scale this up if you needed to do that. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it's going to start from B5 here. Okay. Quite difficult to do with the underscores. Get my excuses in early here. Excel down. What do we think? Yep, no errors there. Okay, let me tell you about my little analogy here, which is in cricket. in cricket, I'm going to explain this. Explain this assuming you don't know anything about cricket. But in cricket, you have training, practice, and practice happens in nets, cricket nets. So if you say I'm going to nets, it means I'm going to cricket practice. It's called nets because a bit like you have a baseball cage, you have a cricket net, and you practice bowling or pitching and batting, and you hit the ball into a net, which means you don't need fielders. That means it's a good way to practice. And there's a phrase in cricket which is, don't try to have a perfect net, and it must translate over to baseball. If you're having a batting session, you're going to play a bad shot. So don't blame yourself if you play a bad shot. You know, it's practice. You should make a couple of mistakes. How does that translate to a coding session? Well, I try to have a perfect net. I do try to have a perfect net when I'm coding, and if in my coding session I don't get any errors from the VBA editor, I don't think I have so far, that means I'm close to having a perfect net. And this is just totally my ego talking, not necessarily at all for learning. In fact, it's probably a kind of not a good way to learn at all, but it kind of gives me a little, makes me a little bit happy if there's no errors from the VBA editor. Certainly no major errors so far, so that makes me happy. Anyway, so this now dynamic mechanism, and does this still work? F5 key, we've got our information in the report there. So what if we wanted the next row of the report? Could we just change this to 6? F5 key, run the code. Now we've got Honda Accord 2012. Yep. Okay, that seems to be working. Now, what I'd love to do is put another column of information in here and just show you how this report can be dynamic. So let's now have year 4. And year 4 is going to be this value plus how many miles do you do in a year? Anybody in the chat? How many miles do you do in a year? Let's say ran between 10 and 15,000. Is about what I do. Okay, Control D, copy that down. Control C, Control Alt VV. Whoa, take the values. I think, did we get the values there? Didn't get the values. Okay, Control C, Control Alt V and V, and the values are in there now. So, got an extra column in the database. Suppose we want an extra column in the report as well. Okay, Alt HOH, 30, F4 key, repeat the last action. So mileage end year 4. Now this is where the beauty of this approach, you can really see it here. So we just take this down. So mileage end year 4. Then we want C11, and then this is going to be the 10th column. So just by populating the table, just by putting those extra bit of information in the table, it should all work because we've got this beautiful dynamic mechanism that accounts for additional data at the bottom of the table. Let's have a look. F5 key. Then to the report, and we can see, yeah, we've got our mileage pulled through there. So the second row, 54966, seems to be working well. So there's one more thing I'd like to do. Okay, let's see if we can get this done. So suppose we have 5 buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and create these buttons. Now you could do this programmatically, of course. On the Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions channel, we have a series which is called Custom Navigation, Excel VBA Custom Navigation, and you can see in that series how to quickly create and manipulate buttons. Not sure what happened to this one. Some size issues there. There we go. So now I've got 5 buttons set. Now I want to be able to click the button and for the information from that row to appear in the report. This is exactly what I'm going to have to do for my customer tomorrow, so it's good. It's a good kind of a revision for me. So any ideas? Any ideas in the chat? What could we do? And this is an approach you would have seen on the Tiger channel if you've worked through all of the videos. So let's say, okay, got this. I have a few kind of secret weapons, I'd say, in Excel VBA, and I love this little construct here, application.caller. So here we're saying to VBA, the thing that called the macro. Beautiful piece of code. Let's see it working here. So I'm going to just put a stop in the code here. Then I'm going to go ahead. I don't think the code is not assigned to this button, so these buttons. So this is an interesting one. These buttons don't currently have a macro assigned to them. So we're going to go through manually assign macro. You know, we could. But if we go Alt-HFDO, Alt-HFDO, or you can go, let's see, whole desktop here. Yeah, if you go home, find and select, and then select objects, it puts Excel into what I call PowerPoint mode. So it means you can just draw on the screen and Excel will select the objects that are selected, the shapes, the charts, whatever it might be, that are within the range that you've highlighted there. So we can now hit the right mouse button, go to assign macro, and you can see all of these buttons now have this macro assigned to them. Now you've got to hit the escape key to get out of this select objects mode. That's one of my bugbears with select objects mode. I can't look at Excel and tell that we're in select objects mode, or maybe I can somewhere. Maybe there's some notification somewhere that I don't know about. Let me know in the chat if I'm missing that. So you have to hit the escape key. Hit the escape key. You can see my pointer has returned to what we expect it to be. So that gets us out of this select objects mode. Let me know if you're still following along in the chat. So what are we going to do with this application caller? Let's see it in action first. So I can just now hit this button and you can see the name of the button is going to appear here. Okay, how cool is that? So if Excel knows, and because we've got a breakpoint in the code here, the code is stopping there, so it won't be populating the report at the moment. So now we can say to Excel, okay, you know the name of the object that called this routine. So can you find that object and tell me what row it is on? This is the deal we're doing with the VBA editor. We can do that by saying active sheet dot shapes application dot caller dot row. Let's see if this will work. This never works first time. I'm going to continue my perfect net cricket thing. Go back about 5 minutes if you want to get that reference. F5 key. What happens here? Oh, okay. We need a bit more here. Is application.caller.name. Let's have a look at this. No, okay. I think, let's try this. Okay, no. We need this, another cool property, which is top left cell. I think that's going to work. Okay, this top left cell, again, talk about cool things in Excel. Excel can look at an object, a shape or a chart, and tell you the top left cell in relation to that shape. So what cell is the shape on effectively? So it's amazing Excel can make these links between the spreadsheet, between the grid and the shapes, the objects that you put on it. So let's stick the breakpoint in there. Left mouse click, breakpoint is in. F5 key. Again, struggling. Okay. Let's try. Okay, let's try this. Okay, bottom one. Maybe that would have worked. It's just that let's try that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that was working. It's just if you're using application.caller, you've got to make sure in your testing you trigger the macro using the button. Otherwise, you've called the macro from the VBA editor, so the application.caller.mechanism isn't going to work. David, my man, helping me out. Top left cell dot row, and there it is. Got this telepathic understanding apparently. And here we go. So again, we use the message box there to do the testing. So we've got 5, reset the code, hit the stop button to reset it. Then we've got 6. So what do we want to do with this information? We want to allocate it to this row number variable. Previously, we were doing hard coding, if you like, the value of this variable. Not anymore. We're taking the value in a much more dynamic way. Okay, so this now means we should be able to hit the button, and then that data is going to go into the report. That's probably as far as we'll go tonight. But let me know in the chat if you want to know anything else about this code. Not sure if I can live demo it, but I can certainly give you some ideas. So the Honda CRV, not CVR, CRV, there we go. So is that information now in the report? Yes, it is. 50447. Yes, 2009 5711. Yep. Okay, good. And let's go. Let's put the Nissan Leaf in, and the Nissan Leaf is in. There we go. Yeah, I think that's as far as we're going to go. But yeah, this is the exact mechanism I'm going to be using tomorrow when I prepare this kind of report for my customer. So I won't be copy pasting this code, but I will be taking, it'll be exactly the same mechanism. So in fact, I may well copy paste this code across, and then I'm just going to adapt it for the example I've got to use for my customer tomorrow. And this is what I love about this code, this mechanism. You've got your table in the spreadsheet, then you've got the code in the VBA editor. Only really a single line of code. Super powerful, super flexible. Virtually any number of rows. You can choose where it's going. Such a cool approach. I've gone a step further previously, and I've actually put the sheet name here as well. So there'll be another column in here saying sheet name, and that means you can choose where in the file this information is going to go, which sheet and which cell. So we're just looking at which cell, but you can also specify the sheet and even the file. If you're working with multiple files, you can do that just with a humble table on a back-end sheet, a hidden sheet somewhere. You can get this whole mechanism working for you beautifully. So that's how to create reports using Excel VBA. Thank you to David. Thank you to Carlos. Thank you to Paul. We will be streaming again tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, and I would love to see you here.